You look at your paycheck and, technically, you made money. The number is right there. The warehouse collapsed. Perhaps there was even a small increase, but then you open the market account. Then look at the rent, then there's the car insurance. Then the mortgage payment, then the balance of your 401k. And suddenly, one thing becomes clear. You're not living any better. You're working, saving, trying to be responsible, but each month seems a little tighter than the last. This is the part that almost no one in Washington talks about in a straightforward way. The debt doesn't have to disappear for someone to pay for it, it just needs to be redistributed. And when a government owes trillions, prints money, refinances, manipulates interest rates, and lets the currency lose value, the bill doesn't arrive under the name national debt. It arrives as the most expensive supermarket, more expensive rent, more expensive insurance, higher taxes, salary that doesn't keep up, retirement that seems less secure. They are not erasing the debt, they are making you pay. If you want to understand the financial risks that actually affect your wallet, subscribe to the channel. Because the danger here isn't just the giant number on the screen. The danger lies in the invisible mechanism that transforms public debt into private pressure. And most people only realize this when their previous standard of living no longer fits within their own salary. The comfortable lie is believing that the national debt is far away from you. She lives in Washington. He lives in political speeches. It lives in graphs that nobody understands. It lives in numbers so large, they seem fake. $39 trillion is so absurd that the brain shuts down. So many people do what is natural, ignore it. But the debt doesn't stay trapped in a government building, she's leaking. It appears when the market costs $50 more. It appears when the rent goes up again. It appears when the car insurance premium increases. It appears when your city raises local taxes because it's under pressure. It appears when the government needs to collect more revenue, cut less, or claim that inflation is under control. And it becomes apparent, especially when your salary goes up 2%, but your life improves 10%. That's the trick. They make you think that national debt is a political problem. But in the end, it becomes a domestic problem. It becomes a choice between saving money or paying a bill. That if, in the coming years, everything doubles in price, wages rise slightly, houses become more expensive, cars become more expensive, and the dollar buys less, that old debt begins to seem smaller in comparison to the new world. She was not forgiven. It wasn't deleted. It was only eroded by the loss of the value of money. This is how a government can reduce the real burden of debt without actually paying off the debt. He keeps interest rates below inflation. He refinances old debts with weaker future dollars. It pushes banks, retirement funds, and institutions toward government bonds, which are called safe haven assets. Meanwhile, the average citizen looks at their own account and thinks, why do I earn more dollars, but can I afford less life? That's the point. When inflation is rising faster than your money is earning interest, someone is losing out. The government benefits because the old debt becomes lighter. But those with idle money, slow-moving salaries, or fixed pensions feel the pinch. It's like a family that took out an old loan. The payment seems lower. But food, rent, insurance, and energy costs have increased. It has become easier for debtors to pay off debts. Life has become more difficult for those who pay. It's the worker who receives a raise, but realizes that the raise was already too late. It's the retiree who lives on a fixed income and discovers that stability doesn't mean security, and everything around them gets more expensive. It's the person who saved money in cash because it seemed prudent, but sees that money buying less each year. This refers to individuals who hold bonds, conservative funds, or a portion of their 401k portfolio in securities that yield less than the inflation experienced daily. This refers to families that do not own real estate, stocks, or businesses, and therefore have nothing that increases in price along with the current market. It's the young person who looks at a simple house and realizes that the American dream has become a moving goal. And it's the entire middle class, squeezed between food, energy, insurance, rent, local taxes, student debt, credit cards, and health insurance. Loss doesn't come as a single bill. No one sends you an invoice saying, your share of the national debt is due on Friday. The reckoning comes in small doses when the food package gets smaller. When insurance premiums increase without a clear explanation, when rent increases faster than wages, when working hard no longer creates the same ease it once did. That's how life gets harder every year, without anyone admitting who's really paying the price. Economic data that looks good in the report, but bad in your life. And a public narrative repeating that everything is under control. The danger doesn't have to look like a movie collapse, with banks closing, people running in the streets, and the dollar collapsing overnight. The real danger is much quieter. It's about waking up 5 years from now, looking back, and realizing you work more, earn more in numbers, but live with less freedom, less margin, fewer choices, less future. This is how the standard of living is being eroded. Not because of an explosion, but through an infiltration. And if you're already feeling this pressure first in the market, in rent, insurance, salary, taxes, debts, or retirement, comment on where it's hitting you hardest in your life. And leave a like if this explanation is helping you see what's normally hidden, because the most important question is not whether the government can reduce the debt. The question is, who absorbs the difference? When someone says that debt can be erased, it sounds like a clean, technical, almost magical solution. But there's no magic in economics, there is a transfer. If the government pays off old debts with weaker dollars, someone will receive those weaker dollars. If interest rates fall below inflation, someone has lent money and lost purchasing power. If the official inflation rate seems lower than the inflation rate you've experienced in your lifetime, someone is being convinced that the problem is smaller than it appears. So this video isn't about how Washington improves its own balance sheet. It's a matter of whose balance sheet gets worse so that theirs seems manageable, the one from the family, from the retiree, from the worker, about a young man trying to buy a house, from the saver who thought security was simply about not losing money on their bank statement. The second sign is when your salary goes up, but your fixed expenses rise even faster. It doesn't matter if you earn more in numbers if rent, insurance, food, energy, and taxes eat it all up before the month is over. The third sign is when homeownership remains unaffordable even when everyone promises that lower interest rates will solve the problem. If interest rates fall, but prices rise along with them, the installment payment continues to crush the average beer. Another sign is the insurance company exploding. Car. Home, health. Everything that should protect you starts to become just another source of pressure. Then come the extra jobs, more people doing side jobs. More retirees returning to work, more families are using credit cards to cover basic expenses. More people are saying the economy is strong, while they're living as if they're in a recession. And when politicians start selling solutions that are too easy, watch out. Because, usually, what's easy for the government becomes a difficult bill for you. Start by looking at your personal inflation rate. How much has your market gone up? Your rent is your insurance. Your debt, what is the real cost of living? Then, stop treating cash as eternal security. Cash is useful, an emergency fund is necessary. But money left idle for many years may seem safe while silently losing value. It is also important to understand the difference between productive assets and nominal promises. A promise states, you will receive a certain number of dollars. A productive asset tries to keep up with the real world, income, profit, use, value. Avoid bad debt, protect your earning capacity, understand your taxes, diversify carefully, and think less about how much I have and more about what it buys. Because in this type of system, those who only look at the numbers may realize too late that the number has gotten bigger, but life has gotten shorter. It may seem more stable as your insurance increases. You can say that inflation is under control, or your market is getting more expensive. You can celebrate growth while you need jobs to maintain the same standard of living. So don't just look at the debt number, look at the way they deal with it. If this path involves inflation, negative real interest rates, indirect taxes, loss of purchasing power, and data that doesn't match your life, then the debt isn't being erased. She is being transferred. And perhaps the most dangerous part is this: you can pay the bill without ever receiving an official invoice. Please comment on where you feel this first. Market, rent, insurance, salary, taxes, retirement, or debt. Leave a like if this video helped you see the mechanism behind the problem. And watch the video that's playing on the screen now. because in it I'm going to show you how to think about purchasing power in a system where the cost of crises almost always ends up falling on ordinary people.